Why so glum, Critic?
It's this hyper fangirl from the last review. She asked me out on a date, I said no, and now she's doing that Facebook thing where she writes down these very vague, miserable messages, but then asks people not to ask her about it.
My life is hell. Don't ask why.
2 minutes later.
There is no hope for humanity. Don't ask why.
1 minute later.
I am the saddest and loneliest person who has no friends to ask her about her problems. Don't ask why!
Well, why don't you just unfriend her?
I can't do that. She's a fan. That means somewhere in there's a glimmer of brilliance trying to get out.
Well, as a popular holdover from the last review, I recommend either a compromise or caramelizing her until her insides are stretchy and sweet.
Well, maybe there's something to be said about what? Maybe there's something to be said about compromising. I'm gonna contact her. You don't destroy anything.
I make no promises.
You are a whiny and pathetic little loser. Don't ask why!
Hello?
Is that you, my hipster love?
I'm not a hipster! Second, I'm doing an old versus new of the Spider-Man movies. I heard you were a Spider-Man fan.
I may have dabbled.
Both movie series were a huge hit, bringing in a brand new audience to enjoy the web-slinging Spider-Man himself. But as you would expect, audiences seem to be very split on which series is actually the better Spider-Man series. Which one had the better story, which one had the better action, which one had the better villains, and of course, which one had the better Spider-Man. I would invite you along to be a part of it, but we all know the new Spider-Man films are better, so I guess there's no purpose to...
Whoa, wait a minute. The new ones aren't better. The old ones blow the new ones out of the water.
Oh, come on, with Thierry Maguire?
Oh, I'm sorry. He did overstay his welcome, like that whopping 2 minutes of the Rhino.
Maybe there is a bit to talk about with these Spider-Man movies. What do you say we go over it together as friends? And no getting super obsessed over anything, got it?
Like you need to ask.
Well, no use in delaying the battle. This is fan versus fan in the newly restored old versus new. Now keep in mind, this is all opinion-based, and naturally there's going to be a ton of spoilers. Also keep in mind that we're going to move the order around a little bit. Seeing how the name of the movie is Spider-Man, it only makes sense to judge Spider-Man last.
Let's talk more Spider.
With that said, let's take a look at story first. Now, it's pretty obvious that anyone who can take a story about a kid being stricken with super spider powers seriously deserves a lot of credit. And both these films take very different approaches.
The original looks at it more from a comic book point of view, with over-the-top action, funky camera angles, and classic mad scientist stories.
Sadly, the dialogue is just as corny too, where the new version tries to tackle the story more like a movie, with more realistic characters, a grittier tone, and a spy thriller edge.
But if it's based on a comic book, wouldn't you want it to be more like a comic?
But if you're turning it into a movie, wouldn't you want it to be more like a movie? This is where the big debate comes in. We know the original has a lot of corny moments, but you could argue it's part of the classic comic book style, just like the original Superman movies were. This is why you'd think it'd be obvious that the original had a more complicated comic book story and the new one would keep it to a self-contained 2-hour flick. But no, it's surprisingly backwards. The original films are actually very easy to follow. Boy loves girl, gets powers and turns into a superhero, fights off supervillains who most of the time are his best friends. With great power comes great responsibility.
The new films, on the other hand, has all of that, plus his parents disappeared when he was young.
Okay, fair enough.
They discover a biological miracle that could be used as a weapon.
Yeah, okay.
A plan is underway to create a league of supervillains.
Got it.
Which results in 3 villains in one movie whose motivations all have to be started from the ground up.
Okay.
As well as axing off other characters who are just going to be replaced with new ones that'll take time to establish.
See your point.
Oh, it looks like Jameson and Black Cat haven't had much screen time yet.
Okay, Christ and biscuits, I get it already!
Oh, and Ghost Leary.
Yes, for all the simple dialogue and hokey moments, the original Spider-Man films did always have a flowing 3-act structure. Even the third one that had 3 villains, each one still had established motivations and arcs. Hell, some of them even took the extra time to build their story arcs early. Harry starts off as an early villain in 3, but we had 2 movies prior showing exactly why. The second Amazing Spider-Man threw 3 new villains at us, all having to be established. That's way too much to throw in a movie and still be emotionally invested in all of them. The original still took time for every character, and yeah, a lot of it was silly, but it still allowed us time to make, at the very least, a little bit of a connection with all of them.
So does that mean?
Yes, as much as I hate to admit it, the original Spider-Man films did have a better understanding of a flowing narrative. Point goes to the old.
When I win, we all win.
Oh, shut up! But what good is story in an action movie? To the Transformers films, nothing. This is best action! Now this one is really tough as both movies have their high points and low points in terms of action. For example, the first time I saw Spider-Man hanging upside down, it was pretty cool to see. We've only seen that in drawings, and to see that pose physically come to life was pretty cool. Also, a few moves incorporating his powers like this are always fun to see too. But the rest of the action was surprisingly underwhelming. The setups were good, like a parade with giant balloons and fighting to hold onto a giant car from a bridge, but they all looked a little too slow and, honestly, kind of phony. The CG was a little too rubbery at times, and a lot of these moves look more like a Disney stunt show than they did an actual fight going on. It just didn't seem very fast and it looked a little too rehearsed. With the newer films, the fighting is a lot more slick, blending in fast acrobatics with the speed of what CGI can do. But with that said, the setups were a little bit more mundane. A fight in the sewer is not a very riveting location, or a school for that matter. I mean, okay, cars hanging off of a bridge is pretty neat, but didn't we already do saving cars from a bridge already?
Wait, are you dismissing the incredible train chase in Spider-Man 2?
No, I was just getting to that.
Oh, good. I thought I was gonna have to caramelize your insides until they're stretchy and sweet.
You know, I don't like how that's becoming a thing. The train sequence is where things got really good with the older movies. Yeah, it's obviously CG, but the creativity and the speed and the way each moment built on top of one another, it's just a jolt. I felt like I needed a nap after seeing that scene. Even in Spider-Man 3, the fight sequences incorporated the CG with the actors much better. This way, when Harry and Peter are fighting each other, you don't see computer-generated puppets, you see Harry and Peter actually fighting each other. But I think what works a little better with the newer versions is that because the locations are kept so simple, it allows you to feel the urgency of every move, despite how fast they're going. It's like watching Jackie Chan as a web slinger. You just feel the weight, but also the speed of how he operates. When Spider-Man holds that car on the bridge in the first film, we don't really get a feeling of how heavy it is because they never really showed how strong his powers could be. At least not to that extent. With the new one, you feel how heavy everything is. It takes effort to hold that car, but not quite beyond his range. The slow-mo is also utilized much better. In the original, I never got why they slowed certain scenes down. Is watching him get hit just to hold onto the car again like we saw before really deserving of watching one more time so closely? With the new one, it's like watching a ninja Sherlock Holmes. You see a car flying towards him, one web shooter goes out, and his spider sense is picking up that others are going to be dead if they touch the rail. This needs to be slowed down because we need to see in a split second not only what the problem is, but how he's going to get out of it, making his recovery from it all the more impressive. I guess I just saw more of the effort and the technique with the new Spider-Man movies. Not that there was none with the original, but it's kind of like Indiana Jones. You constantly feel the sweat and tears going into all his moves. Where half the original just kind of looked like a Power Rangers episode. And on top of that, when this Spider-Man is swinging around, you really feel like you're swinging around with him. The original just kept it at a medium shot, always like you're watching a video game version. And seeing how being a web slinger flying through the city was a big part of Spider-Man's charm, that makes a big difference to get right too. So, close call, but I think I am gonna go with the new films for the better action.
I'm still not convinced. Name one other moment that was better than the original.
The best Stan Lee cameo ever.
Okay, fair enough.
Point goes to the new. But action is only deserving if it's going to a good purpose. Is there anything more evil than comic book villains?
Actual murderers?
And you made it weird. This is best villains.
You asked.
Again, in many respects, a tough choice. Apparently nobody is born into crime or just chooses crime anymore. They all come from experiments gone horribly wrong. Groundbreaking genius? Oh no, science! Owner of a booming profitable business? Oh no, science! Science, science, science. Science? Oh no, science! Most of these villains have a ton of time devoted to them. And they need to, seeing how most of them suffer from Hammy, Jekyll, and Hyde-itis. Seriously, did we ever get one that didn't have a split personality?
Oh, what? You've never had the voices of a loved one mentally torture you inside?
No.
Oh. Well, neither have I. Quiet, Grandma!
The only one who seemed to get annoyingly sidelined in the original was Venom, who went from being one of the coolest jock badass villains of all time to that whiny 70s show kid asking Jesus if he could perform a hit for him. Yeah, I'm sure that's how it works.
I come before you today to ask you for one thing. I want you to kill Peter Parker.
Okay, but it's gonna cost you some Hail Marys.
Whoa, wait a minute. If you're talking about rushed, what about Edward Electro-Nigma? His turn was so quick he could win the Indy 500 with it.
Okay, granted there wasn't as much time devoted to him because of all the other stuff in the movie, but you gotta admit you've known a lot of weirdos in your time. I assume, and you know a lot of them probably do strange things on the turn of a dime.
But there's no time to show his change. He forcefully becomes obsessed with Spider-Man, forcefully becomes a supervillain, and forcefully decides he now hates Spider-Man. The other movies at least gave more of a progression.
He doesn't need much progression, he's just a weirdo.
Well, all weirdos have stories too.
Look, is it so hard to grasp that sometimes strange people just do strange things?
Hi, Hyper. How's it going? Got any new fan art? I'm working on a slash fiction between... Oh my god, is that the Nostalgia Critic?
Yes, Mac.
Hi, how you doing?
He said hi to me. I am instantly in love with you.
What?
What? What do you mean what? Are you doubting our connection?
I didn't say
That's
that.
it. From now on, you and me are enemies.
What?
There you go again with that word. What? You just better pray nothing powerfully bizarre happens to me.
Something powerfully bizarre happened to me.
Good God, what did you do?
I got bit by a lightning bug while I drank Red Bull. Now I'm all electrocuted.
How the hell is that possible?
I don't know, it's just science. Now it'll make you pay for your insulin.
Don't you mean insolence?
That too.
Well, I don't know about you, but that made a bunch of sense to me.
Point taken.
Speaking of wasted villains, do I even need to bring up the Rhino in Amazing Spider-Man 2?
It does kind of go without saying that the villain, as well as choosing great acting giant Paul Giamatti to play him, was pretty much pointless. I know, I'm sure they're building him up for another sequel where he'll be pushed to the side again for other villains, but by God, imagine you're Paul Giamatti and you've gotten the role in one of the Spider-Man movies, one of the biggest superhero franchises of all time. How would you react if you found out that you were only in it for a couple of moments?
Hey, Paul.
It's your favorite client.
Checking in on the Spider-Man role, huh?
So what's happening? There's still no word, huh?
Well, actually, there is word.
Right? And?
You're playing one of the main villains, the Rhino, but only exactly for 2 minutes. Isn't that great?
How's that?
But come on, the Lizard's got a lot of sympathy and attention, and Harry Osborn's relationship with Peter was certainly given a good amount of time. And both of them played their roles much more seriously than the goofiness of Defoe, Molina, and so on. All of the villains from the original were completely over the top.
Alright, if you can answer this one question correctly, I'll admit defeat.
Okay, shoot.
What is one line of dialogue any of the villains have in the new movies?
Ha! Easy! Hi, Spider-Man. I'm the Lizard. This is why Superman works alone.
Now, how about the old Spider-Man movies?
Oh, sure. Follow the cold shiver down your spine. Peter Parker, smart but lazy. You knew this was coming, Pete. The itsy bitsy spider. Oh.
Uh-huh. The villains may be corny, but you remember everything about them. You remember their plans, you remember their costumes, you remember their motivations. Because the new movies try to be somewhat more realistic, it can't go all out and therefore aren't as memorable. Even when they do go all out, it doesn't match the rest of the movie and comes off as kind of silly.
Yeah, as much as Harry seemed more messed up in the newer films, I do remember the conflict in the original ones much more. Even the birth of the Sandman. There's no line of dialogue in that scene, but you completely feel every bit of emotion because they let it play out. That's one of the greatest supervillain bursts I've ever seen in a movie. The newer films seem more concerned about squeezing in too much for building other sequels. Even though I do take them a little bit more seriously, I do find the old villains are just more colorful, threatening, interesting, and just all around more memorable. Sure, a lot of it's kind of dumb, but that's part of the comic book style. It's kind of like watching a Tim Curry performance versus a Henry Fonda performance. You know Henry Fonda is going to give a good performance and it's probably going to be better, but you also know that Curry is going to be much more entertaining and leave a much bigger impact on you. And seeing how the villains play a big part in a comic book movie, it's probably best to side with the ones you remember the most. So, yeah, as much as I hate to let something as goofy as this pass.
Tell me how! The heart, Osborn. First, we attack his heart.
I have to admit, it probably is more fitting than the alternative. So yeah, I had to accept defeat. Point goes to the old.
You made Grandma very happy.
What?
Nothing.
But every story needs a little bit of love.
Ooh! Can I do the lead-in for this one?
No.
But I have the perfect love sonnet.
You said we would just do this as friends.
I promise it has nothing to do with anything.
Then why are you even saying it?
Please!
All right, go ahead.
Damn it!
Why don't you start with the original?
Oh no, that'd be rude.
No, seriously, I want to hear you defend this one.
It's your show. You should start.
Oh, please, you're the guest on the show.
I
It only
can't-
figures
you have
that you
the
should do it
jacket.
first.
Which
I
of
mean,
these
come on, you've always
packs,
been so
please?
adamant
I can't
about
do
going
it.
in
Your
there first
glasses
and
are
showing
better
what's so
than
great about
mine.
it. Name one good thing about Mary Jane!
She has pretty hair?
Mary Jane sucks!
Okay, yeah, she kind of does.
Okay, to be fair, let's talk about some of the good things about her. She is supportive when she's not dicking Peter around, though to be fair, he does it just as much to her as she does to him. She is given a bit of an interesting backstory with her coming from a broken home, and Kristen Dunst does everything in her power to make this an interesting character. But aside from that, she is a tool. She is something for Peter Parker to chase. She's someone for him to save, someone to always be concerned about, someone to look at him in awe, someone to always give him pity. In short, she's only there to make Spider-Man look good. She's not a character, she's a character's girlfriend. Someone to be appealing superhero arm candy. Someone to look pretty in Spider-Man's arms.
Now, to be fair, the comics have written her much better over the years and have given her a truly defined identity.
But the movies?
No, she still kind of sucks at this.
It doesn't help either that the romantic dialogue given makes it practically impossible for them to have any chemistry to begin with.
You're taller than you look.
I hunch.
Don't.
I'm benign.
I'm stupid.
We belong together.
Also the fact that she's dated every male character who got 2 seconds of screen time in these films. Seriously, who was this guy again?
My son, the astronaut.
Oh yeah, how can we forget what impact that guy made? In the new movies, we got Gwen Stacy, who face facts is just 10 million times more interesting. She's a science genius, she's got a good sense of humor, she's constantly helping Peter in every way possible. And I mean like, actually help. Not just cheering him on or saying you have my support, but actually coming up with scientific reasonings to defeat the villains.
The antidote is cooking.
No. Connors is on the way. You leave right now.
I'm gonna get everybody out.
Did you hear? You mother Hubbard.
Remember the last time Mary Jane tried to help? On top of that, I'm just gonna say it. Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy, they're just fucking adorable.
This is the most cliched hiding place you could have chosen. This is the stupidest hiding place.
Take us to the Bahamas of hiding place.
I mean, I have no problem believing both these two are in love. Their chemistry is beyond precious. They made me use the word precious. That's how good it is.
I'm coming with you. You know that you need me.
You're coming with me. Shut the thing. Sorry, I love you. Don't hate me.
It's a million times better than the forced romantic dialogue from the first film.
You saw her for the first time. You grabbed me and said, Aunt May, is that an angel?
If by angel you mean a lifeless statue who does nothing but looks pretty. The only time we see Mary Jane start to form her own character was in 3, when we see for once she needs support given to her instead of the other way around. But even then, that's done so much better in the newer films. She's off to Harvard, she has huge opportunities ahead of her, and if anything, Spider-Man is going to work around her schedule. In the old, we still gotta wait 2 movies before Mary Jane even figures out that he's Spider-Man.
I was in the neighborhood.
Oh, come on, he's not even disguising his voice. Will you get a clue? This gives very little time for the relationship to bloom because they're constantly going back and forth whether or not they even want to be in a relationship. And that's no fun. We want to see them like each other. We want to see them get along. We want to see them go through actual relationship stuff. And in 3, we started to until we got that whole bullshit about Harry forcing him to break up, and bada bing, we're back to the same bullshit that we started with before. I swear, if they followed through and killed off the girlfriend at the bridge scene like they did in the comic, I wouldn't have given a crap in the original. But because of how likable their relationship is in the newer films, it's a legitimately sad departure.
But the original was much closer to how that scene should have worked.
Maybe in the conflict between Peter and the Goblin, but in the new one, they not only got the tragedy of losing somebody dear to you, but also of being so close to saving them, yet ultimately resulting in their destruction. And to me, that's a much more tragic and heartbreaking angle. Why? Because she would have been interesting even if you took Spider-Man out of the equation. Mary Jane would not be.
But
what?
But her hair's really pretty!
Point goes to the new. It's all tied up and it comes down to the big one. Let's wrap up old versus new Spider-Man with Best Spider-Man.
Now this one you know you have to give to Tobey Maguire. He's the perfect geeky, awkward teen of the original comics.
Really? Because I thought Andrew Garfield captured the confident, joking, smart-ass superhero of the original comic. So maybe neither of these captured Spider-Man completely.
Peter did start off as a weak nerd who would suddenly turn into the city's greatest hero.
But after he turned, he became a cocky smart aleck spewing one-liners left and right. So somewhere in between these two, there's a perfect Spider-Man representation trying to get out. Do you lean more towards the sympathetic loser, or more with the triumphant badass? Now, to both their credit, each one has dabbled in the other persona. Maguire certainly has a few badass moments, and Garfield definitely has his socially awkward moments. Both have their disadvantages too. Maguire, for example, is given way too many crying scenes and way too many moments of him being a doofus.
Wait, are you against males crying in movies?
No, I'm not against males crying in a movie, but good God, he does it at fucking anything! Hell, he cries more than Sally Field does, and that's the queen of criers!
Well, it's not like Garfield doesn't repeat a ton of cliches.
No, that's true too. Garfield's cockiness at times can get a little grating. I always wondered how many lives were constantly put in danger because he was too busy making jokes to the Rhino rather than stopping him from running cars over with his truck. But the big turning point for me is that despite them both capturing how hectic and stressful it can be doing what they're doing, Garfield is evolving into more of a man. Maguire isn't. every time he takes one step forward, it seems like Maguire is taking 2 steps back. Between being Spider-Man, not Spider-Man, being with Mary Jane, not being with Mary Jane, being emotionally in control, letting his emotions make all its choices, and of course just this. God! I never felt he came all that far by the end of the series. Garfield, though making similar mistakes, seems to learn more and more about the responsibilities of being a hero, and tries constantly to put them into practice. From talking a guy out of a bad situation to trying to be there for his supportive aunt, he does it all without whining and without complaining. At least, after he's Spider-Man. Both are allowed breathing room beforehand. But yeah, how many times have we heard Maguire bitch about something? There's a sense that Garfield will always confront a problem and try to figure it out, where Maguire seems constantly lost and having no idea which direction to turn. Garfield will just take any direction and somehow translate it into moving forward, making the best out of any situation. If he sees an opportunity for something to help someone or make himself better, he'll take it. It's not always the right choice, but at least he's committing to something. On top of that, Maguire is so quiet and so awkward, it's kind of hard to imagine him running around in an outfit like that. This guy is so eccentric, so energized, and just a show-off that you can completely see him running around in a silly getup like this. He's kind of like a mad genius who's thinking of ideas a mile a minute and creating them even faster than he can mentally process them. Of course he'd do something this insane. It's like if Steve Jobs was a superhero or something.
Ooh, I think I have fan art of that.
I'll trust you. The only time he quits being Spider-Man is after Gwen's passing. And fair enough, anyone would be thrown off after something like that. With Maguire, it's just the stress of the job. And don't get me wrong, I can identify with that, but by comparison, you starting to see my point here? One quits being Spider-Man because his girlfriend died, the other one did it because it was just hard. Which one do you think is going the extra mile? Which one would you rather be? Which one would you look more up to? Which one would you put the most faith in saving the day? Which one would you grow up reading a comic book saying, yeah, I want to be like this person when I grow up? Get up! Close up together. Don't fuck us so. Garfield, the superior hero.
No!
Sorry, Hyper Fangirl, but this Spider-Man is more interesting, more entertaining, and more thought-provoking. Point goes to the new, which means that the all-around winner is the new Spider-Man series.
How can you possibly like the new better than the old?
Well, honestly, looking back at them again and in light of your commentary, it was actually much closer than I thought.
Really?
I used to think the newer films blew the original out of the water. But the more I looked them over, the more I realized they both have a lot of advantages and disadvantages. Neither one of them are perfect representations of the Spider-Man stories, but they both come in their own unique way to some interesting interpretations. Some are for the best, some are for the worst. What I realize now about both of them is that they both tried their best to stay faithful to the material, but also tried to do things a little different while also being self-contained movies. It's hard to take an idea as silly as this and make it sell to a movie-going audience. But sure enough, we have 2 movie series that seem to have done just that, and both, in their own way, hit their own personal bullseyes. So, thanks again, Hyper Fangirl. You actually did open my eyes up to a few things, and I'm glad we could do this as mature friends.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad I could help.
Say hi to your, I don't know, grandmother, I guess.
Oh, I don't know what you mean.
Yeah, whatever.
A friend. I guess that's all I'm supposed to be. A friend.
You listen here, Missy. No grandchild of mine is gonna give up that easily.
But he's my friend.
And I'm your fat grandma, and you must avenge me.
You're not even dead.
Mind your own business. Now you gonna go after that critic or not?
Oh, Grandma, you always know just what to say.
Less talking, more stalking.
Right.
The heart, honey child. First you start with the heart. And by the way, I am personally offended that I was not called in for this comic crossover.
Where's Fat Grandma?
Who's Fat Grandma?
Oh, is someone doing a Spider-Man review? You know the Raimi film sucked.
I hunch.
Guess what I got? That's right, a Twitter page. Well, okay, not me personally, but it only figures that thatguywiththeglasses.com should have its own Twitter page. For updates, website information, all that good stuff. So, no need to keep looking, this is the one to go to. And if you find any others pretending to be me, imposter pussy pansies, who want to be who I am so bad they can taste it. And I taste good. So go ahead and start following at this address, and see how the social media forces me to join the collective. But I don't have to like it!